Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. When we think of the French Revolution, images of guillotines, angry mobs, and the reign of terror often come to mind. It's a period famous for its ideals of liberty, equality, fraternity, but also for its shocking violence. So what happened? How did a revolution that started with calls for fairness and constitutional reform descend into such a bloody chapter of history? That's what we're going to unpack today. Let's set the scene. It's the late 18th century. France is ruled by an absolute monarch, King Louis XVI, and society is split into three estates. The first estate was the clergy, the second was the nobility, and the third estate, well, that was everybody else, about 97% of the population. Despite making up almost the entire country, the third estate had virtually no political power and shouldered almost the entire tax burden. The clergy and nobility, meanwhile, lived lives of immense privilege and paid almost no taxes. On top of this deep-seated inequality, France was broke. Decades of lavish spending by the monarchy and costly wars, including helping out in the American Revolution, had drained the treasury. To make matters worse, a series of bad harvests led to a massive shortage of bread, the staple food for most French people. Prices skyrocketed. People were starving, angry, and felt abandoned by a government that seemed to care more about court luxuries than their survival. This combination of social injustice, economic crisis, and widespread hunger created a perfect storm. The people had had enough. The first major spark was the storming of the Bastille on July 14th, 1789. This medieval fortress was a symbol of the king's absolute and oppressive power. When an angry crowd of Parisians stormed it, looking for weapons and gunpowder, it was more than just a riot. It was a symbolic takedown of the old regime. This event sent a shockwave across France and the world. It showed that the people were no longer afraid and were willing to use force to achieve their goals. The revolution had begun, and it was already clear that it wouldn't be a peaceful negotiation. In the early days, the revolution was led by more moderate figures who wanted to establish a constitutional monarchy, similar to Britain's. They issued the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, a groundbreaking document asserting that all men are born free and equal in rights. It seemed like a new, more just France was on the horizon. However, the old powers weren't going to give up easily. The king, the nobility, and the church resisted these changes at every turn. This is where a crucial element comes in: fear and paranoia. As the revolution progressed, other European monarchies like Austria and Prussia looked on in horror. They were terrified that these revolutionary ideas would spread to their own countries. So they started making threats, and eventually in 1792, France found itself at war. This external threat dramatically radicalized the revolution. The French people felt they were fighting for their very survival, not just against foreign armies, but against traitors within France who might be helping the enemy. This fear of internal enemies, or counter-revolutionaries, reached a fever pitch. King Louis XVI and his family tried to flee the country in 1791 but were caught. This was seen as the ultimate act of betrayal. If the king himself was trying to abandon his people and join their enemies, who could be trusted? This event shattered any remaining faith in the monarchy and fueled a growing demand for a republic. The paranoia grew, and suspicion was everywhere. Neighbors spied on neighbors, and any word of sympathy for the old regime could get you branded as an enemy of the people. This atmosphere gave rise to more radical factions, most famously the Jacobins, led by figures like Maximilien Robespierre. They argued that to save the revolution, they had to be ruthless. They believed that terror was a necessary evil to purge France of its enemies and protect the new republic. In 1793, King Louis XVI was put on trial and executed by guillotine. This was a point of no return. By executing their king, the revolutionaries declared a total break with the past and sent a chilling message to the crowned heads of Europe. Soon after, the infamous Reign of Terror began. The Committee of Public Safety, led by Robespierre, was given vast powers to deal with internal and external threats. What followed was a period of state-sanctioned violence on a terrifying scale. A law of suspects was passed, which made it incredibly easy to arrest someone with little to no evidence. Simply being an enemy of liberty was a crime punishable by death. Revolutionary tribunals were set up, and trials were often short and predetermined. Tens of thousands of people were arrested. Around 17,000 were officially executed by the guillotine, which became the grim symbol of the era. But the total death toll was much higher, with many more dying in prisons or during massacres in the provinces. It's important to remember that the victims of the terror weren't just nobles and clergy. The vast majority were ordinary people from the Third Estate, the very people the revolution was supposed to liberate. A careless word, a personal grudge, or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time could lead you to the scaffold. So why did it spiral so far out of control? It was a deadly combination of factors. The deep-seated anger from years of inequality provided the fuel. The constant threat of foreign invasion created a climate of fear and urgency. The internal resistance from the old elite fueled paranoia about traitors. And radical ideologies, championed by charismatic leaders like Robespierre, convinced people that extreme violence was not only justified, but necessary to achieve a utopian future. The revolutionaries believed they were creating a new, virtuous republic. And for them, the ends justified the means, no matter how bloody. Eventually, the violence became too much even for the revolutionaries themselves. The terror consumed its own. As Robespierre became more and more powerful and paranoid, his own allies began to fear they would be next. In July 1794, they turned on him. Robespierre was arrested, and ironically, met the same fate as thousands of his victims: the guillotine. His execution marked the end of the reign of terror. The French Revolution, its journey from a call for justice to the reign of terror, is a powerful and sobering lesson. It shows how noble ideals can be twisted and how fear, paranoia, and war can push a society to extremes. It reminds us that the line between a freedom fighter and a tyrant can sometimes be terrifyingly thin. The revolution undeniably changed the course of modern history, but its legacy is forever marked by the blood that was shed in the name of liberty. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into a complex and intense period of history. I hope this gave you a clearer understanding of why the French Revolution turned so violent. If you found this video interesting, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more historical explorations. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.